Coming up on Cannabis Coast to Coast News this week.
Lawful cannabis businesses have been unable to open accounts, and employees of those businesses have been debanked. This shouldn't be happening.
That's Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren at this week's Banking, Finance, and Urban Affairs Committee hearing that uninvited the cannabis industry because it's still federally illegal.
There's a cannabis banking issue that deals with SARS as well, where I hope the Safe Banking Act, which was a good step forward, but needs to go further.
That's Adam Klein from the Brookings Institute to at least get the plight of the industry with the most debanking issues into the record for that 119th Congress. And a GOP congressman from Georgia adds a cannabis prohibition amendment to a bill to control fentanyl. Andrew Berenger has that story from Washington, D.C. Plus, is Pennsylvania the odds-on favorite to get adult use through that state's legislature this year? Governor Josh Shapiro is ready to sign it if his Congress can deliver. And another governor, well, with an opposite view of adult use in his state is Florida's Ron DeSantis, despite a 56% win on last year's ballot question.
Here's the thing. There's a lot of different perspectives on marijuana. It should not be in our Constitution.
Plus, when is getting 15 months in jail a good sentence? When you're facing 160 years. Joe Parsons has the story of Don Morris's sentencing from Virginia on Cannabis Coast to Coast News next.
And that we were given these plants. Plants should not be regulated like this.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'm PCM TV founder Jimmy Young in Massachusetts, who's filling in for Alaina Pinto, who I apologize, but she's on assignment in Quebec City this weekend. I'll try my best to fill in for Alaina, but I will have a little help from my friends on the Cannabis Coast to Coast News team.
I'm Karen Black in Arizona.
I'm Andrew Berenger with the Washington, D.C. report.
I'm Tina Tasaka from Las Vegas, Nevada.
I'm Joe Parsons in Virginia.
Those are just some of the state reports we have for you this week, and a reminder that we now release our weekly news show at 9 a.m. Eastern Time on Mondays, and it's live on all the social media platforms, all 7 of them, and of course, our PCM TV app available at the App Store and Google Play. Up first is more depressing news out of Washington, D.C., where it is becoming more apparent than ever that the 119th Congress does not want to move forward with any type of federal reform of cannabis. That includes the rescheduling efforts that seemed imminent under the Biden administration. With more doom and gloom from our nation's capital, here's Andrew Berenger.
I'm Andrew Berenger with the Washington, D.C. report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. In a significant move affecting the cannabis industry, Republican Senators James Lankford of Oklahoma and Pete Ricketts of Nebraska have introduced new legislation that could maintain strict tax restrictions on the cannabis businesses, even if federal authorities proceed with plans to reschedule the drug. The No Deductions for Cannabis Business Act targets the IRS Code 280E, which currently prevents cannabis businesses from claiming federal tax deductions. While the expected rescheduling of cannabis from Schedule 1 to a Schedule 3 would normally allow these businesses to take standard deductions, this new bill aims to specifically prevent that benefit. Both sponsoring senators have historically opposed cannabis reform. Senator Lankford previously led efforts against cannabis rescheduling, while Senator Ricketts has taken strong stances against cannabis legalization during his time as Nebraska's governor. The timing of this bill is particularly notable as the Drug Enforcement Agency administration continues to evaluate the potential rescheduling of cannabis. While that process faces delays, the legislative effort appears to be a preemptive strike to maintain current industry restrictions, regardless of if cannabis changes on this federal scheduling status. Now, the bill remains uncertain, though supporters hope to see it be included in some upcoming reconciliation packages. If passed, it would represent a significant setback for the cannabis industry's efforts to achieve normal business status under federal law. Well, that's the Washington, D.C. report. I'm Andrew Barringer reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
Now let's talk about that debanking hearing in Washington, D.C. The Finance Committee of the Senate would not allow any federally illegal industries to be heard and testify, basically prohibiting the entire cannabis industry from being heard. However, there were two champions for the cause who managed to at least recognize the $1 million, make that $1 billion cannabis industry as the biggest issue with debanking.
Debanking happens when a bank shuts down a customer's bank account because they think that that account poses a financial, a legal, or a reputational risk to the bank. Once the bank shuts someone out, the bank may share that information with companies that get paid to maintain a do not bank list, with the result that the customer is blacklisted everywhere. Lawful cannabis businesses have been unable to open accounts, and employees of those businesses have been debanked. This shouldn't be happening, and we need to figure out why and who is responsible.
There's a cannabis banking issue that deals with SARS as well, where I hope the Safe Banking Act, which was a good step forward, but needs to go further. Lastly, 5, we need to reform these do not bank list systems like CheckX, where you get kicked out for being just poor, not for fraud. The Bank On program has helped solve that, and that ought to be done across the board.
As someone who's been a victim of debanking because of our financial institutions label this media company as a marijuana-related business. Over the past 5 years, I've had our business debanked and my personal account shut down. I know I'm not alone. Plenty of people in this industry have the same issues. It's not fair, but at least I have company with hundreds of cannabis-related businesses who have all been debanked. Now, back to our state reports with Karen Black.
I'm Karen Black in Arizona. As you've probably heard, there was a big football game in New Orleans on Sunday, February 9th. A little later on, I'll share a story about an Arizona manufacturer who took over 200 orders for infused pizzas for game day. But first, let's talk about the race to become the 25th legal adult use state for cannabis sales in our country. For years, Pennsylvania has done a lot of talking about legalizing cannabis. The Keystone State already has a vibrant medical program, and now their governor, Josh Shapiro, wants to sign an adult use legalization bill. He urged his legislature to deliver one to his desk this year and said so in his State of the State address this past week. Check it out.
24 states have already legalized adult use cannabis. That includes almost every single one of our neighbors. Look, I want to be real with you. As a father of 4, and as the former chief law enforcement of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, this was really hard for me. But I took the time to study it and to understand the impacts, to understand the choice between continuing the black market of drug dealing versus a highly regulated industry with protections in place for our children. Letting this business operate in the shadows, it doesn't make sense. And by doing nothing, we are making Pennsylvania less competitive. Besides, let's not kid ourselves here. Pennsylvanians who want to buy cannabis, they're just driving across the border to one of our neighbors. 5 of our neighboring states have legalized adult use cannabis. I've talked to the CEOs of the companies right across the border in Jersey and Maryland and New York who tell me that 60% of their customers in those shops are Pennsylvanians. We're losing out on revenue that's going to other states instead of helping us right here. We're losing out on an industry that over the first 5 years will bring in $1.3 billion in revenue to our Commonwealth. And so I ask you to come together and send to my desk a bill that legalizes adult use cannabis, expunges the records of people who have been convicted for non-violent possession of small amounts of marijuana. And a bill that sets reasonable regulations, protects public safety, and gives communities that suffered from the criminalization of cannabis an opportunity to succeed.
That social justice clause, in addition to a new revenue stream, may make the timing of this just perfect. No such issue in Oregon, but the price of cannabis in that state is plummeting. Here's Marianne Cursetjee.
I'm Marianne from Alibi with the Oregon Cannabis Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. For another year, the news of Oregon's supply is causing ripples around the industry. The harvested weight from the most recent outdoor harvest is almost double the amount that purchased by consumers. And the 24 harvest was up again from 2023 by a whopping 28%. This again has driven prices lower and will force more producers out of business. Economist Bo Whitney has suggested that the state look to capping supply and also make it easier for consumers to purchase cannabis products. Other states allow THC beverages to be sold in grocery stores, and this would be a much welcome change to the industry if this were to take place. The average price for a gram is now $3.50, which is among the lowest in the nation. The ongoing challenge of accounts receivable only exacerbates the problem. There remains a small glimmer of hope in a possible way to legally ship product between states through the use of a state-to-state agreement. But all appearances show that federal descheduling is a long ways off. The result of this is another year of challenges for Oregon licensees. That's the Oregon Cannabis Report. I'm Marianne with Alibi for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
Now, while Governor Shapiro in Pennsylvania has done his due diligence on studying the plant medicine, there's another governor who remains against adult use in his state. His name, of course, is Ron DeSantis from Florida. Now, that state did pass a ballot initiative for adult use with 56% of the vote, but in that state, a ballot initiative has to pass with 60% in order to make a change to their state constitution. In his State of the State address this week, DeSantis reinforced his opposition to the next 2026 Smart and Safe Florida effort for adult use and took a shot at Trulieve. That's the multi-state operator that has the largest market share for the over 800,000 medical patients in Florida.
You have one corporation that's pushing this. People do not want these massive conglomerates to control the Constitution. And you know, one of the things that was an issue last time was this idea of can you grow your own? And their amendment did not provide for that. As I read this one, what they say is they don't give you that right. They say, well, the legislature is allowed to. But guess what will happen if this passes? Do you think they're going to lobby in favor of you growing your own or against? Of course, they're going to lobby against. And they have a lot of money to be able to try to influence the legislature as a result of that. Here's the thing. There's a lot of different perspectives on marijuana. It should not be in our Constitution. If you feel strongly about it, you have elections for the legislature, go back candidates that you believe will be able to deliver what your vision is on that. But when you put these things in the Constitution, and I think, the way they wrote, there's all kinds of things going on in here. I think it's going to have big time trouble getting through the Florida Supreme Court. And I honestly, as written, I don't think it will even be on the ballot.
Another Florida resident who now lives at 1600 Pennsylvania Ave in Washington, D.C., yes, that's the White House where President Donald Trump has landed again. Needless to say, you never know what's going through his mind at any point of any day. But many of the in this industry are very concerned, while others are hopeful. He might just live up to his campaign rhetoric for federal reform of cannabis laws. You might remember a story from a few weeks ago about the merger of two lobby groups with ties to many of the biggest multi-state operators in this country. The U.S. Cannabis Council and the National Cannabis Roundtable merged their two organizations and now call themselves the U.S. Cannabis Roundtable. The hope is that their combined efforts might earn them favor for federal reform. Sure enough, Curaleaf donated $250,000 to the president's inaugural committee that was funneled through this new organization. Trulieve is also trying to buy favor with the new administration and supported fundraisers in their home state of Florida. Their CEO, Kim Rivers, was in attendance for two post-election fundraisers for the vice president, J.D. Vance. Now, only time will tell if anything will come out of Congress in this session, or maybe we have to wait another 2 years and perhaps 4. Now, since we've been mostly focused on the East Coast, let's head out to Nevada with Tina Tasaka.
I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technologies, and this is the Nevada and Tribal Nations Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. A recent federal funding freeze scare sent shockwaves through indigenous communities, many whom rely on federal aid. On January 27th, the White House's Office of Management and Budget, OMB, issued a memo pausing thousands of government programs, later rescinded after widespread confusion. A federal judge halted its implementation, but uncertainty remains. The Native American Rights Fund, NARF, warned of harm to tribal nations. The Indigenous Cannabis Industry Association responded, emphasizing the importance of self-sustaining revenue models. Rob Pirro, ICIA president, highlighted how tribes with cannabis operations remain insulated from such disruptions, unlike those heavily dependent on federal funds. Pirro urged Indigenous communities to collaborate using industries like cannabis and hemp to achieve economic sovereignty. By collaborating on cultivation, processing, distribution, and market access, tribes can create a self-reinforcing economic network that benefits all Indigenous nations, regardless of where they are in their cannabis or hemp development, Pirro said. While the freeze was lifted, its effects linger, reinforcing the need for Indigenous-led economic solutions. It's Super Bowl time, and lucky me, I ran into many brands at a recent event, and in speaking with one, they have big Hall of Famer news. Cannabis and football are collaborating, and this brand is not dropping the ball. Check this out. And it is a big day for Jeter. There's going to be a lot of people coming in, but boy, does Jeter have some fantastic news. We were just having a little talk, and we were talking about Mr. Ricky Williams.
Absolutely. So, as always, our Super Bowl drop every year for 4 years straight now. We've been working with Ricky Williams and Heisman and his company. So we normally do our drop here. It's a special box. It normally comes with either pre-rolls, cannons, or either a vape. So this year we're doing a special New Orleans edition for Ricky. So New Orleans style, colorway, everything else. But we also got a new addition to the Legend family, and that's Calvin Johnson. For all those who know, our football fans, Detroit Lion fans, Megatron was one of the highest receivers in the league just for 9 years, but he's also been a cannabis user throughout that whole time. So he also has his own company, Primitive, and you have the opportunity to join Heisman, Primitive, and Jeter all in one collaboration this year. Jeter in the house!
That's it for Nevada Highlights and Tribal Nations. I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technologies and Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
That will do it for the A block, or first section of Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Next up, more state reports, including checking in on cannabis activities in Missouri, the home of the two-time defending Super Bowl champs, the Kansas City Chiefs.
Ready to take your craft to the next level? Imagine faster extractions, purer products, and more profits. Sounds good, right? At Pure 5 Extraction, we've revolutionized cannabis extraction with our game-changing technology. No solvents, no heat, just the cleanest, most natural process on the market. Whether you're a boutique grower or a large-scale operation, Pure 5 has the tools to elevate your business worldwide. Visit pure5extraction.com today. Pure 5 Extraction, because your plants deserve the best.
I think I messed up. Did you know there's a place that covers all the cannabis news you need? Welcome to Pro Cannabis Media, your go-to for all things cannabis. PCM is the CNBC of weed, bringing you the latest news and talk shows with a twist. We've got 16 state correspondents and multimedia journalists from around the US and Canada.
Hey everybody, it's Brandon Jones with Be Green Distribution with the Missouri Cannabis Report.
I'm Karen Black from Green Finger Consulting with the Arizona Cannabis Report.
I'm Amy Carter from Michigan Weedsters.
Andrew Behringer here reporting from Washington, D.C.
Debbie Fazy with the Canadian Toke of the Week.
It all started back in 2018 when founder Jimmy Young kicked off the In the Weeds podcast. His mission? Documenting the fight to end cannabis prohibition. Fast forward to today and we've got Cannabis Coast to Coast with Alaina Pinto, delivering the nation's only TV-style cannabis news show.
Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Cannabis Coast to Coast, PCM TV's weekly roundup of industry news from California to New York. I'm Alaina Pinto.
As of August 2024, PCM has racked up over 1.2 million views and 14.5 million impressions on our YouTube channel. With 15,000 subscribers and growing, our reach is spreading like wildfire. PCM's website, YouTube, Rumble, Discord, Roku, Twitch, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and even our very own PCM TV app. Get your cannabis news fix with Pro Cannabis Media. We're here to keep you informed and entertained. Stay tuned and stay lifted.